Hey everyone, and welcome. I am so thrilled to have you here for today's explainer. We are going to be unpacking a true literary masterpiece, George Orwell's Animal Farm. Now, at first glance, you might think, oh, it's just a simple fable about talking farm animals who kick out their human farmer. But it's actually a razor-sharp mirror reflecting the brutal, grinding mechanics of totalitarianism. In fact, this message was so controversial during World War II that Orwell got rejected by nearly every major publisher. There was just no way they wanted to touch it. But he uses this seemingly simple, folksy story to break down incredibly complex historical and political events into a vivid narrative that absolutely anyone can grasp. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our roadmap for the explainer. We're going to cover the spark of rebellion, utopian dreams and early crocs, the rise of dictatorship, propaganda, paranoia, and purges, the ultimate betrayal, and finally, Orwell's universal mourning. Section 1. The Spark of Rebellion. So how does a revolution actually get off the ground? Well, on Manor Farm, it all kicks off with Old Major. He's this elderly prize boar who gathers all the animals together to share a dream. He points out the obvious, that their lives under the human farmer, Mr. Jones, are miserable, incredibly laborious, and unfairly short. Old Major pitches this utopian philosophy, which the pigs later formalize into a system called animalism. And it's absolutely crucial to see how Old Major's teachings are a direct one-to-one parallel with Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto. Old Major is acting as this mix of Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin, setting up what sounds like a totally noble ideal. Let's overthrow the tyrannical ruling class and build a society of absolute perfect equality. Now, what's really interesting is how Orwell neatly maps the literal characters on the farm to their historical counterparts in the Russian Revolution. We've got Mr. Jones representing the negligent Tsar Nicholas II. The pigs represent the intelligentsia, that educated class that organizes and, spoiler alert, ultimately controls the revolution. Boxer and Clover, those incredibly strong but uneducated cart horses, they're the working class. And then there's Moses the Raven, constantly squawking about a paradise called Sugar Candy Mountain. He represents the Russian Orthodox Church, which the pigs initially view as a massive distraction from the real work of the revolution. Decoding this cheat sheet really unlocks everything that follows. Section 2. Utopian Dreams, Early Cracks. The rebellion happens surprisingly fast, right? Mr. Jones is chased out, the harnesses are destroyed, and the animals are absolutely euphoric. The pigs paint 7 commandments on the barn wall to outline this nuanced system of moral judgments and utopian ideals. But here's the catch. A lot of the animals simply aren't literate enough to read or memorize them. So what do the pigs do? They reduce this complex philosophy into a single, highly reductive slogan: 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. And the sheep just begin to bleat this mindlessly, all day long. By oversimplifying the doctrine, the pigs create a rallying cry that literally halts critical thinking and conveniently masks their own emerging treachery. Shortly after the rebellion, the humans actually try to take the farm back in what goes down as the Battle of the Cowshed. On a literal story level, it's a frantic fight for survival. But historically, this is mirroring the Western anti-communist interventions. The neighboring farmers, representing capitalist nations, were terrified of a snowball effect, where their own animals might start getting ideas and rebelling. And Orwell is remarkably objective here. He heavily critiques the communists, for sure, but he also paints the non-communist human farmers in a really harsh light. They aren't attacking out of some noble sense of justice. They are attacking violently out of pure self-interest to protect their own supremacy. Despite their victory at the cowshed, subtle warning signs are already flashing red. The pigs secretly claim all the milk and apples for themselves, and they use their mouthpiece, Squealer, to convince everyone else that they need these luxuries for brain work to keep Mr. Jones from coming back. It's a classic manipulation. Plus, a dangerous imbalance in literacy means the pigs become the sole guardians of the law. You've got Molly, representing the self-centered bourgeoisie, defecting because, frankly, she misses sugar and ribbons. And most ominously of all, the pig Napoleon takes a litter of newborn puppies away from their mothers to raise them in total isolation. Section 3. The Rise of Dictatorship. So that initial collective spirit, it shatters. A massive power struggle emerges at the very top. The farm's leadership splits into 2 distinct, bitterly opposed camps. Snowball, our Leon Trotsky figure, is this fiery orator, bursting with ideas for committees, spreading the global animal rebellion, and advancing their technology. Napoleon, on the other hand, representing Joseph Stalin, is lurking. He's subversive. He couldn't care less about committees. He cares about canvassing support in the shadows and consolidating immediate power.
It brilliantly captures the historical vacuum left right after Lenin's death in the Soviet Union, where leaders were ruthlessly jockeying for absolute control. The ultimate dividing line between the two of them is the windmill. It's a massive symbol of technological modernization. Snowball wants to build it to generate electricity and drastically reduce the animal's backbreaking labor. But Napoleon, he fiercely opposes it. This debate perfectly mirrors the real-world tensions in the young Soviet Union regarding electrification projects and what would eventually become Stalin's 5-year plans. The windmill becomes the ideological battleground for the entire future of the farm's labor.
Let's move to the timeline, because Napoleon's takeover isn't an overnight coup, it is a meticulously planned boiling frog effect. First, you get the resource grab in the summer with the milk and apples. Then, in the fall, seizing the puppies. By winter, right when the farm is about to vote on the windmill, Napoleon unleashes those very puppies, who are now fully grown, vicious attack dogs. They chase Snowball off the farm completely. And then, bam! By spring, democratic meetings are permanently abolished. Those dogs act as his private secret police, completely monopolizing the farm's physical force. Section 4. Propaganda, Paranoia, and Purges. With absolute power secured, Napoleon has to figure out how to maintain his dictatorship. Let's look back at the law. No animal shall kill any other animal. This was one of the absolute foundational 7 commandments established right after the rebellion. It reflects the pure, noble ideals of animalism, a crystal clear moral boundary. But as the regime gets increasingly violent, the animals notice the writing on the barn wall looks different. It now reads, "No animal shall kill any other animal without cause." Enter Squealer, the propaganda chief. He uses this incredibly minor but insidious manipulation of language to subvert reality. He literally gaslights the animals, convincing them their memories are faulty, and those 2 final words were always there. Orwell is showing us that political subversion relies almost entirely on the subversion of logic and language. And that manipulation enables horrific, unchecked violence. Whenever anything goes wrong, like a storm collapsing the half-built windmill, Napoleon immediately blames the invisible enemy, the traitor, Snowball. While the animals are literally starving, Squealer stands up there reading endless lists of fabricated statistics trying to prove food production is actually up. But most terrifyingly, Napoleon stages these brutal public purges. He forces dissenting animals to confess to crimes they didn't even commit, and then has his dogs tear their throats out in front of everyone. This perfectly allegorizes the infamous Stalinist show trials of the 1930s. The entire goal is to keep the populace totally docile and utterly terrified. Section 5. The Ultimate Betrayal. This atmosphere of terror leads us straight to the emotional anchor of the entire explainer. We see the horrific cost of a state exploiting its own workers, and we track this through Boxer, the strongest, most dedicated horse on the farm. He gives endless labor to rebuild the windmill, doing the work of 3 horses. Even during the purges, his blind loyalty holds firm. He just repeats, "Napoleon is always right." Eventually, pushed way past his physical limits, Boxer collapses with a ruined lung. And then comes the betrayal. Napoleon promises to send him to a human hospital, but the van that arrives, it has horse slaughterer painted right on the side. The pigs sell their most loyal, hardworking citizen to a glue factory just so they can buy themselves a crate of whiskey. It is a searing, absolutely devastating microcosm of how totalitarian regimes mercilessly discard the working class they claim to champion. And while his own animals are suffering and dying, Napoleon is busy playing geopolitics. He's doing this diplomatic tap dance with the neighboring farmers, shifting alliances between Mr. Frederick, who represents fascist Germany, and Mr. Pilkington, representing the capitalist allies. Napoleon actually thinks he's outsmarted Frederick by selling him a pile of timber, but Frederick pays with forged banknotes and then turns around and invades, blowing up the rebuilt windmill. This is a brilliant, entirely objective allegory for Stalin's real-world maneuvering during World War II, specifically that doomed non-aggression pact with Adolf Hitler that ended in a devastating German invasion of Russia. Section 6. Orwell's Universal Warning. So, the crucial point we arrive at is the chilling conclusion of the novella. The 7 commandments are entirely erased from the barn wall. They are replaced by a single paradoxical and honestly nonsensical phrase. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. This is it. This is the ultimate victory of propaganda over reality. The very concept of inherent equality has been totally destroyed, replaced by the grim idea that raw power alone dictates who has rights. By the end, the elite class is completely indistinguishable from the oppressors they replaced.
The pigs break every single rule Old Major set down. They're sleepy in beds, they're drinking alcohol, and in a truly terrifying moment, they literally begin walking upright on two legs, carrying whips in their trotters. Finally, Napoleon entertains the human farmers at a card game and just casually announces he's reverting the farm's name back to Manor Farm. The other animals watch through the window looking from pig to man and from man to pig, and they're completely unable to tell the difference. The cycle of tyranny is complete.
It's so essential to remember that Orwell wasn't just writing a takedown of the Russian Revolution. His critique of totalitarianism serves as a universal warning to all of us. He viewed it as a virus that could arise anywhere, whether it's cloaked in communist, fascist, or even capitalist ideologies. Any system that monopolizes logic, subverts language, and demands complete subservience is a grave danger to human dignity. And that brings us to the end of our analysis, which leaves us with a really heavy question to ponder. When the oppressed become indistinguishable from their oppressors, how do we actually break the cycle of tyranny? It really all comes down to media literacy, recognizing the manipulation of language, and deeply understanding the mechanics of power in our own world. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer on Animal Farm. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.